You're listening to the Spark Your Light podcast, where my mission is to help you create a life that sparks the light inside of you. And this is episode 291. Dream big, but start small. The power of breaking down your goals. This episode is for you if you sometimes feel paralyzed by having really big goals and wanting to be ambitious, and you want to dream big, but you also don't know the right balance between also setting realistic goals. If this is you, then this is something that is really going to help you. I used to really struggle with this, and what I talk about in this episode has helped me immensely. So essentially, what I recommend is to break down your big goal into three sort of like micro goals or three levels of goals. So when you think about your goal, let's say for the year, the first goal that you want to set is your absolute must do. This is the goal that you say to yourself, no matter what, I am 100% committed to hitting this goal. So maybe with exercise, it's no matter what, I'm going to work out at least twice a week. That's not your ideal. It's not your biggest goal, right? But it's the goal you have that you are absolutely committed to no matter what. When we pursue our goals, when we have this first level goal, it gives us a place to start. It gives us something to aim for that's not overwhelming. And I think that's important because sometimes when we aim for something that's so big, we get overwhelmed, we get paralyzed, and we stop. So it's helpful to have, okay, this is where I'm starting. I just need to do that first. That's all I need to focus on is that goal. So I narrow in on that goal first. Once I've hit it, then I move on to my second goal, which is my mid-range goal. It's not my big stretch goal, but it's significant progress from my minimum. It's a goal that if achieved, I would feel so proud of myself for. And it's a goal that in order to achieve, I need to be diligent. I need to put in the time, the energy. I need to be resilient. I need to have an optimistic attitude. Those things matter. That's the mid-level goal. If I hit that goal, then I aim for the high-level goal, which is the reach goal. This is the goal that really, really stretches you. It's a goal that you do believe is possible, but it really pushes that zone of where you see yourself and what you think is possible. And you know that in order to achieve it, you have to be so locked in to what you want, to consistent action. You have to be extremely diligent, but you do see it's possible. I think that that's important because if you don't see it's possible, then it's probably not a great goal to set for yourself. It doesn't have to seem possible to other people, and it doesn't have to seem realistic to other people, but it needs to feel possible in your heart. I think that's important. Like there's some way that I could do this. There's some way that this could come together. So once I hit my mid-level goal, then I aim for the reach goal. And the reason that this strategy works so well is because in the past, I would only set the reach goal. And then if throughout the year, it seemed like I was pretty far off from it, I would feel discouraged and it would make me want to give up altogether on the goal because it felt like there was no chance of me hitting it. And this is something that I actually experienced this morning, which is so funny. I was getting ready to come to the studio to record some podcasts, and I set a goal for myself. I said, I want to get out of the house by 6:30. And I'm putting my makeup on, looking at the clock, and it's 6:22. My hair's wet. I'm like, there's no way I'm getting out by 6:30. But something really interesting happened. Instead of continuing at the same pace and maybe getting out at 6:34, I slowed down. I thought, well, there's no way I'm going to hit that goal. So what's the point? And I thought to myself, that's ridiculous, because the reason I wanted to get out by 6:30 was because I had uninterrupted time before my podcast recording session to go to a coffee shop and do some work. And being in a busy season right now, that time is precious. So if I were to continue at my same pace and even just get 5 extra minutes that I wouldn't have gotten if I had a slower pace of getting ready, that would make a big difference for me. So even though I might not hit the stretch goal, if I hit the mid-level goal, that would have been really great. But it was so difficult to get my brain wrapped around that. And honestly, I probably didn't. It took me a while. I probably got out of the house at 6:45, which was completely unnecessary. But I just didn't have the spark. It's so interesting. And I find this to be true in almost every situation where I'm pursuing my goals. And it lines up really well with Dr. Martin Seligman's research on learned helplessness. So his research essentially brought dogs into the lab, and this was many years ago in the 60s when a lot of lab testing used dogs still. They do not use dogs anymore for ethical reasons, but they did then. So they brought the dogs into the lab, and essentially some dogs were given escapable shock that they could control. Some dogs were given inescapable shock that they could not control, and some dogs were given the control. The dogs that received inescapable shock, when they were put in a situation that they could control, which was this little shuttle box where they could just jump over a really small barrier and go to the side of the box that there was no shock on, they actually didn't even try, and they laid down helplessly, continuing to receive the shock. And so the theory that Dr. Seligman developed, learned helplessness, essentially says that when people experience uncontrollable adversity, they often become helpless. Now, what's really interesting about this is there were 2 dogs out of the 8 dogs that did receive the inescapable shock and still escaped. So Dr. Seligman followed up this study with many, many studies on people testing the same concept of learned helplessness. And what he found is that the people that did not become helpless, even when experiencing uncontrollable adverse events, were the people who had optimistic explanatory styles. And an optimistic explanatory style is the way that you explain these adverse events. And this is something I talk about in detail on episode 289. So go back to that if you want to hear more about that and how you can change the way that you explain bad events into a more optimistic explanatory style, which all comes from Dr. Seligman's book, Learned Optimism, which I highly recommend if you're interested in this. Where this plays out in relation to the conversation we're having is that when it seems like we can't reach a goal, when it seems like none of our efforts matter, that we don't have any control because we're so far, and no matter what I did that morning at 6:23, there was no possible chance if I moved at lightning speed that my hair would be dried and my makeup would be on and my shoes would be on and my coat would be on and I'd have my water bottle in hand and I'd be walking out of the house at 6:30. It just was impossible. So no matter what I did not have control over that. And so I became helpless. And what's really important here is that by setting these 3 layers of goals, we take back our control or our perceived control over the situation. Because we have the power in our hands to achieve that absolute minimum. And then once we get there, we feel like we have the power. We already have some juice. We already have momentum to get to that mid-level. And then once we get there, we feel like we have more potential to get to that reach goal. So it really does help us take back our power so that we do not become helpless during the year when our goal seems so far. And I don't know about you, but that's something I've struggled with many times. So this strategy is really helpful. And it's something that I use and I encourage you to try if you have struggled with that balance between realistic and unrealistic goals. I think this will help. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I will catch you in the next episode.